Well, hello my little beauties, it's David Connolly here, the web developer extraordinaire. I want to do a little response to the great Adam Khoury. Pardon me, it's Khoury. I believe it's Khoury and I do apologise. I got code in my brain, folks. Anyway, it's Adam Khoury, I think I have his name right, who posted a video in which he spoke about how frameworks and third-party libraries are basically ruining everything. His observations are good. His observations are meticulous, and I think it's good that we're having conversations like this. Unfortunately, I respectfully disagree with his ultimate conclusion. That does not mean that I'm saying he's a bad developer. He's a great developer. But I disagree in the manner in which two great chess grandmasters may disagree about whether to use the Sicilian opening or the English opening. These are nuanced academical disagreements, and Adam is a great developer. In any event, if you missed his video, he was saying, I'll leave a link in it, but he was basically outlining the fact that frameworks and third-party libraries do not appear to be secure. They appear to be very flawed. The house of cards that is NPM appears to be collapsing. Apps have stopped working. I've had emails this week from NPM saying at least one of your repos is insecure. And I think that whole ecosystem of NPM and packages is now starting to fall apart at the seams. Those are not Adam's words. That's me kind of dramatizing what he was saying. And I think that he's right. I think that there are huge problems with all of that. However, there are a couple of points that he made that were either somewhat, to me at least, irrelevant, or maybe even not entirely the conclusion that I would agree with. So I'll give you the irrelevant. He was speaking about how apparently some university did research and they researched a gazillion websites and they all looked the same. And what he appeared to be saying, I do believe, is that when people use third-party libraries for, let's say, CSS frameworks, then we all end up building sites that look similar. That's kind of true, and it comes, he says, at the expense of creativity. That might be true, but I don't really care about creativity, you know? After this video, I'm going to be helping somebody with an online shop, and if there are certain designs that keep reappearing. For example, here's a screen and maybe like a video message here and calls to action here, for example, or something like that. Maybe that's because enough time has passed that we've realised that these are the designs that convert, you know? There's nothing to get emotional about. There's no need to start, getting upset because we're not being creative. For some of us, commercial web development is just that. It's commercial, and we are in the business of converting. I don't give a rat's ass about designs being original, nor do my clients. They care about sites converting. So I just make that point, but it's not a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. The other thing I would say, though, is perhaps a wee bit more my own area of concern. And this is with the frameworks all pretty much letting us down, you know. And I think that he's right, and I would congratulate his video, and I again watch the video. But his conclusions, I would suggest, are wrong. And his conclusion is basically the standard Steph Mischuk conclusion, which is that very well-intentioned declaration that we should all just start using the core technologies. This is, of course, completely unworkable and preposterous. When I started using PHP commercially in 2003, there was a period, and by the way, I never used frameworks until 2011, but there was a period of time that lasted for years, whereby developers like me, who were hard-working and perfectly well-intentioned, could not figure out how to protect our sites from SQL injection attacks. I have a book in the corner that says use add slashes. Later on, the word came out, use MySQL real escape string. There was a time when I even used to write my own libraries doing all sorts of string manipulation, trying, often in vain, to build sites that were secure. But sure enough, and thankfully, when I switched to the frameworks universe, well, you use a major framework, then there's a good chance it's been built by somebody who knows what they're doing. And if you follow the documentation, let's say for form validation, as long as you stick to the documentation, if it's, let's say, a top 10 PHP framework, you're not going to get an SQL injection attack, you know? So this is one of the main reasons why I started using frameworks, security. Another reason why I started using frameworks, though, was productivity, and also I wanted some kind of code unification so that if I was sick, I could lift the phone and maybe get some help. The idea of us having some sort of standardization, some kind of even just a loose agreement on how we're going to structure web applications, that's a good idea. It's good for developers and great for employers. Now, if you end up with a web development community where everybody is a purist and they're all doing their own frameworks, I mean, you're going to use a framework, right? A framework is just a bunch of folders and files that have been created with the task of making your development time more productive. So if you've ever gone into a web app and made a folder, well, if you've put something in it, such as an HTML file, I'm calling that a framework. So you're going to use a framework regardless. And if you end up with a situation where everybody's using their own frameworks, it would just be chaos. And I know he's probably watching the video. I know one developer, hello, he shall remain safely anonymous. And in private, he has told me that he takes delight in the fact that he's the guy who wrote the code and is the only guy who knows how this works. Maybe that's a great decision. I'm not judging him as a person, but I definitely would feel nervous about hiring a developer who had their own library, their own framework. That would be a scary proposition, and I think a lot of business owners have been held to ransom. But I'm never going to offer a criticism without offering a solution, and I believe that the solution is, well, I think that the frameworks have failed. They have not made us more productive. They've not made us more secure. It turns out that NPM and I would say packages are a hacker's paradise. So they haven't helped. And certainly I don't think that we're all writing code in some kind of a uniform, standardized way. So the frameworks have failed miserably. My conclusion is pretty unthinkable, but I think we need one more framework. And there was, not another framework. Hear me out. I don't care whether you're talking about JavaScript or PHP. I don't know about the other technologies, but when I look at those ecosystems, what I'm seeing is an infection of rewrite culture, self-appointed aficionados, and over-engineering. The Angular framework is a classic example of an over-engineered framework. Angular uses third-party libraries like RxJS. The source code is dog shit. You're never going to get to the top of Google with an Angular site, not for any prestigious phrase. And it's so over-engineered that even a highly proficient JavaScript developer wouldn't have a chance of going into the bowels of that framework and figuring out what was going on. So we have this web development community that across the board is committed to over-engineering things, making things over-complicated, rewriting things constantly, and pandering to self-appointed aficionados. This is causing chaos in not just the PHP community, but even in the job sector. I've got the database to prove it. I've got the backup. In 2015, it's very normal to find a PHP developer job for 60 to 70 grand a year. Now, those same employers are still paying 60 to 70 grand a year in London. The only difference is that only 30 grand is going to the developer and the rest is going to the DevOps manager. Thanks to monstrosities like Agile and DevOps, the web development community is being ruined by middle management who are moving in with their certification bullshit, and they are taking over the industry and making it impossible for poor people to participate. If any of this just sounds like a negative rant, then let me give you a case in point.
I don't write a lot of code these days. I don't do a lot of code from one day to the next. I don't necessarily like that, but it's a fact code. So I get a little bit rusty once in a while. I'm on the Zen Certification Advisory Board. So if you're not certified, or if you are certified, chances are you answered a question that I helped put on the test, or at least reviewed, whether it's the PHP certification or the Zen Framework certification. I encourage folks to get certified.
I don't think that those clips require any comment from me. So I'll wrap this video up and I'll just say in conclusion, Adam and I agree on the general state of affairs as far as frameworks and third-party libraries go. I agree. However, we disagree with our conclusions. He thinks that the solution is we all go back to learning core technologies. I, on the other hand, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think we need to reinvent the framework. We need to go right back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, why do we even need a framework in the first place? I would suggest there's 3 reasons: security, productivity, and some degree of standardization. Not the code police. I don't care where you put your curly brackets or anything like that, right? But just some general framework, there's probably the best use of the word ever, that we can agree upon, and then we can build some cool stuff, hopefully. If we did that, then web development salaries would go where they should be, which is probably about double where they are. And employers would benefit as well, because they would get stuff done. Finally, the way that we share code libraries has to change. And I'm not going to mix my words with this. I'm not going to really care about who gets offended by this. But I am calling out NPM and Packagist as being bullshit. I've got 3 pennies here. I'll just leave you with this thought, right? Got 3 old pennies right in front of me. Here they are, right? So imagine if you're building a website and let's say you've got a discussion forum. Here's your discussion forum, right? Okay. Got the Queen's head upside down. Ha! How you like me now? They're going to come and get me here. Okay, so you've got a discussion forum. You've got an invoicing system. You've got a contact us form. This is your site and you've built it, right? Now here is your site. It's fantastic. Oh, it's a glorious, fabulous site. Okay, little folder for the discussion forum. Little folder with some files for invoicing. Little folder for a contact form. Now let's assume that you say to yourself, it would be nice if we could generate PDFs for the invoices. Well, what happens when you use Packagist is you look up a thing that will say, here's your PDFs. And when you add that onto your site, you're basically doing this hook. And you're taking these massive monstrosities and adding them onto your site. And these sizes are good. If you look at, for example, the AWS library that's on Packagist, I can pretty much guarantee if you decide to use that using Composer and you say, well, I'm going to do some Amazon stuff, what you add onto your site will almost certainly dwarf the entire rest of your website. And of course, everything that you get from those places, I'm talking about NPM and Packagist, they have their own rewrite schedules. their own leadership teams, their own internal politics, their own security flaws, their own hopes, fears, pluses and minuses. It's just not worth it. It doesn't make sense. Ask yourself this question. If intelligent aliens came down from another planet and they said, we're going to build a web application, what do you think it would look like? Do you think they would do this and build something like that? I don't think they would. I think that doesn't make sense at all. Just because you can go on the command line and do some stuff and you've got a library, that does not mean it's good. It destroys benchmarks. Even the micro frameworks are slow. Go look up Slim, the Slim PHP framework. Go look at the articles where the dude behind that, and he's a nice guy, but he furiously tries to defend the crappy benchmarks that micro framework has. I have a tutorial on that with over 60,000 views. I've looked into it. And so, Adam's right. The benchmarks are crap. There's no stability. The stuff's all breaking. I say that we start something here. I say that those of us who have YouTube channels, I will always have a small channel, by the way. Every day when I come on, it says, you've got 25 new subscribers. What it doesn't say, and you need to look at the stats, is that every day I lose 25 subscribers as well. I don't believe that 25 people are waking up every day and saying, I think I'll unsubscribe to that guy. It just doesn't happen. So this channel is doomed. I'm possibly going to end this channel soon, actually. But those of us who have some kind of a voice, we should start calling out the bullshit when we see it. And the bullshit is rewrite culture, self-appointed aficionados, and over-engineering, and whatever else was bullshit that I said was bullshit. And it probably is. So thank you very much indeed, and I hope, to steal a phrase from Lewis Rossman, I hope you learned something.